Ladies and gentlemen, it is time! This is the final day of CCW Online, New Standards for Customer Contact Performance. Before we dive into our final day of sessions, I want to take a moment to thank everyone involved with this event, our speakers, our sponsors, and most importantly, each and every one of you listening. And I don't say that simply because you've made this a record-setting event for us. Don't get me wrong, I'm very grateful for that. But what I really want to thank you for is because you've so clearly demonstrated the resilience and the focus and the hunger we've long known is inherent to the customer contact community. It would have been so easy to look at what's going on in the world right now as a temporary setback, to forfeit the year and say, yeah, we weren't ready for work from home, we weren't really ready for an increased use of digital channels, but that's okay, right? It's a rough time. As long as we do okay, things will go back to normal after that. But you're not saying that. You're saying there's never a break when it comes to the customer experience. There's never a break when it comes to being customer-centric. We need to take care of our customers and our agents right now and do everything we can for them. And you're also saying we're not going to let the world go back to normal because A, that's probably not going to happen. The environment we've known, the landscape we've known has likely forever changed. But B, even if it did, normal wasn't good enough. There were so many missed opportunities in that normal, things that prevented us from elevating connections with our customers and being ready in the recent period of crisis. So I thank you for proving what I've always known, that the customer contact community is not looking to just get by, but continue making customer service a source of value, making it the heart of our businesses. With that said, it is my pleasure to introduce the final day of our event, one that, like the 3 previous days, contains so many great sessions. We'll look at more strategies for humanizing the experience, more opportunities for using automation to simultaneously scale our operations and become even more customer-centric. And then we'll close with a look at how remote work will evolve moving forward. As always, you can ask questions at any time. You can also access resources at any time on the left-hand side of your screen. And we've been updating these throughout the event, so make sure to look through that and ensure you've gathered all the valuable and totally free content. And of course, as another reminder, our session is being recorded, so you will be able to relive CCW Online, share it with your team, and make sure that you're doing everything you can to rise to the current occasion, and most importantly, ensure you take that meaningful step forward. Ensure your customer experience continues to grow, continues to evolve, and that your current level of satisfaction is not going to be nearly as high as tomorrow's level of satisfaction. Without further ado, let's welcome Matt Wujak to kick off day 4 of our event.
If you're just joining us, welcome to New Standards for Customer Contact Performance. I'm Matt Wujak, CCW digital writer and analyst, and your host for today's session, Humanizing CX During and After a Pandemic. I'm here with Stacy Sherman, former leader of customer experience and marketing at Verizon, Schindler Elevator Corp Director of CX and Employee Engagement. When Stacy's not at her day job, she's writing for Forbes or Doing CX Right, as well as podcasts for Doing CX Right. Stacy, you're a very busy woman. Thank you for joining us. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so glad to be here to share my opinions and views, not representing any of the organizations you mentioned, but very happy to talk about humanizing business, especially during a pandemic.
So Stacy, our first point of discussion today, we've talked a lot recently about the different psychological benefits of customer experience and employee engagement. I want to first focus on that second part. You recently wrote in one of your articles, publicize awesome work, brag about individuals and teams on the company website. 79% feel motivated when recognized, according to work.com. Publicize that customer advocates too, with their permission, of course. Talk to me about the importance of psychological motivation in the contact center and overall business-to-customer communication and customer experience.
Yeah, so I want to start with a word that comes to mind, especially now, which is the word safety. And there's the obvious, which is the physical safety, but also so important is psychological safety. And that has a lot of meaning. And so as leaders of companies, small and large, the more that you can make your employees feel psychologically safe, safe to share their views, safe to communicate, safe to speak up, the more they're going to be motivated and engaged. And I think that it comes from three particular tips. I would say that proven tips that work during this time, but even beyond now. So I can give you three if you'd like to elaborate a bit on this.
Absolutely.
So communication is number one, right? Being in the know. Am I doing the right things? Is my boss satisfied with my work? Don't let employees guess. Tell them. And that creates a psychological feeling of I'm safe. Everybody's scared of losing their jobs right now. So to me, that is really important, communication. And it's communication to the employees, but also to the customers as well, letting them know that you're taking care of them and continue to reinforce. Number two is inclusion. Invite your contact center reps, your survey callers, and others to be part of meetings and discussions where decisions are made. The more people feel connected to the results, the more they're going to contribute. And then finally, celebrate successes. Broadcast those great stories, especially when there's a customer involved. Many times customers will mention somebody by name. Take that opportunity to recognize those individuals and teams. And it doesn't take a lot, even a handwritten card. Small gestures go a long way.
Absolutely, Stacy. And ultimately, all of these components, the three components that you mentioned, trickle down to engaging your employees and giving them that psychological safety in a time of need when the economy is not doing well, layoffs are surging week to week. I think those are some great points there. So just kind of moving on here. We talk about productivity a lot and ultimately how it trickles down to impact the customer experience and how employees are engaging with the interactions with their customers to produce optimal services and experiences. According to a Stanford research study, nearly $1 trillion is lost each year as a result of low productivity levels. How have you seen remote work and crisis ramifications play a part recently?
Yeah, remote work has its pros and cons. I tend to focus and recommend that being isolated per se physically doesn't mean that people need to feel lonely. There's a difference. And the way that you combat that and deal with a crisis is together and having frequent calls with your team. I make it a priority that we set goals together, we speak often, we use our cameras, our videos. I don't care what anybody looks like. It's the fact that we create that feeling that you're not isolated mentally, and it's working really well for us, and it's not hard to do.
Absolutely. And then priority number two, of course, employee. Sorry, go ahead, Stacy.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I just thought of another thing to share that is easy to do, which is finding common ground with the people that you work with and interact with. So, for example, one of the things my team and I are doing is we're having a book club. And it's kind of unique because there's an author, Simon Sinek, who has a book, Start with the Why, and it's so powerful. But the point of it is you could take a book, a TED Talk, a podcast, bring your team together to have conversation about a common topic. And it really does break silos, especially when you can invite broader teams. So just another tip that even when you're working so many miles apart, it doesn't have to feel that way. And when you feel connected, you are more productive.
Right, and that hits into our second point on employee recognition. It's all about increasing that connectivity and increasing communication. So according to a recent Qualtrics study that their team provided our analysts, 57% of workers feel more anxious since the outbreak started. In fact, over half feel more emotionally exhausted and more irritable. How does employee recognition play a role in increasing customer satisfaction scores across departments?
Yeah, so at the end of the day, I mean, we're all human, and I don't know a single human being who doesn't like to be appreciated, thanked, feel valued. And obviously we need to give that to ourselves. But with that said, it really feels good when others say even just thank you. And so at the end of the day, as I mentioned, that we know that happy or even content employees fuels customer happiness. It's simple math. So I highly recommend people at all levels take the time to let the people you work with, including your customers, how much they are valued, especially during a pandemic when everybody's fearful for different reasons. It's so simple, it's basic, but at the same time, it goes a long way to say thank you. Obviously, if you can give any kind of gift recognition, those small things, are very nice, but you don't even have to go that far. And one of the things we do, a CX best practice, includes leveraging your customer surveys, NPS, CSAT scores, and celebrating those good customer feedback using the promoters and the people who mention by name, and then using the feedback as when there's detractors as coaching opportunities to build people's confidence. So bottom line, employee recognition comes from a real intentional focus to help people and recognize them and communicate it.
And you're right, it does sound simple on the surface, but it completely is an underutilized tactic to engage these employees so that they're coming to work every day excited, whether that's from their kitchen or an on-site contact center office. It's all about employee recognition and engaging the employee to satisfy consumers. So even something as simple as a thank you, a gift card, whatever it might be, certainly something that can combat that stat of 57% of workers feeling more anxious or insecure about job security or the general state of the economy or whatever it might be.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, just think about, we talk about humanizing business. It's taking advantage of human sentiments and human feelings, factors. And the more that we feel good, even as a worker, a parent, the more you're going to give, the better you're capable of giving. So it's important.
Absolutely. And as we dive a little deeper in here, we talk about employee recognition and employee engagement to ultimately humanize the customer experience in the long run. But gamification is also becoming an increasingly important and common practice across not just contact centers, but different industries. What are some of the best practices for gamifying that employee experience for the ultimately end user?
Yeah, so I like friendly competition, but it has to be done right, where everyone feels engaged and confidence-boosting activities. I like when you get points for doing that right thing, especially if you could tie it to serving customers. So, for example, a company might say for a service industry, if you need your employees to show up at the customer location wearing a uniform and it's neat and clean and represents your brand, then tie points to that good behaviors where you want them to do more of that. And I also say a best practice is make sure that the rewards, the redemption prizes for whomever is part of the gaming, is that those prizes are meaningful to the target participants. So just like CX practitioners get the voice of the customer feedback, get the voice of employee feedback to see that it has great appeal for what they can redeem the points for. And that helps make gaming valuable, not a waste of time.
Absolutely. And as we kind of talk about the importance of satisfying employees to satisfy customers, we move back into the customer experience and their journey map and what we're aggregating and knowing about the customer as well, because it's a very two-sided equation. Yes, employees make customers happy, but we also need to know everything there is to know about our customers so that we can serve them in the long run. We talk about personalization a lot, specifically through actionable analytics and data aggregation. How does actionable analytics continue to become a greater factor in knowing the customer, whether we're in a pandemic, we're not in a pandemic, or a post-pandemic world where actionable analytics becomes vital to knowing our customer?
Yeah, so I would say it's important to use the vast amount of customer insights to make decisions and personalize those experiences. So for example, if you consider a telecommunication company and you go to a website, they know who you are, particularly if you log in, check your account or whatever it might be. So it's using that data to serve you up meaningful content. So personalizing through the data would be the company knows that you're an iPhone user, showing you iPhone accessories, not Android accessories. So it's using that data to better service content and meaningful information to you, but also it's using the data from unstructured methods like social media, ratings and reviews, and structured surveys, right? Aggregating that all and leveraging the data holistically to serve your needs and expectations. So that's how I've been approaching data and personalization in a totality view.
Right. So you kind of hit on twofold there. It comes down to, one, yes, we can be sending out surveys, social media engagement. There's all different kinds of ways to collect data, but also we could collect data through traffic, right? Like you mentioned, not specifically Verizon, but you mentioned giving a customer the product they want based on their search history, et cetera. I recently had a conversation with Allison Lichtenstein, the head of experience design at Dow Jones, and she told me Wall Street Journal built their customer experience digitally around exactly that. As customers kind of navigated through the site, they were able to personalize the content for the customer based on their subscription, based on their search history, based on the traffic they were clicking on, et cetera. And ultimately, it comes down to collecting that data so we can personalize the customer experience and deliver better services in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
Priority number 5, consumer personas. We touched on it a little bit, but aligning the employee and customer experience to create consumer personas in our brand. So how can we combine that employee experience that we talked about earlier with the customer experience to create detailed customer profiles and ultimately consumer journeys?
Yeah, I start with existing customer data. I review the demographics and related quantitative data to who we're currently attracting. Survey insights is also useful. And then I overlay employee feedback, especially the front line, as they have so much insights. And I also recommend talking to your targets of who you want but don't necessarily currently attract to understand their needs and construct the right personas and design journey maps that match their unique needs. So it's a combination of the data you have, the data that you might need to get, and then create the personas and, again, those journey maps for each individual needs.
Absolutely, and it does tie into marketing a little bit as well. After we're able to aggregate some customer data and ultimately combine everything we know about the customer, we can then segment it to different demographics or target market research audiences and deliver that perfect experience based on specific needs. So thank you for that. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, just a comment that it is all about their needs. And what I found in different organizations is that sometimes people get hung up on the fancy words and fancy job titles and acronyms. It's really just remembering that we're talking about people. This is people. What do people want?
Right.
What do they want for what reason? And then go after that audience. So I just recommend to those listening, don't, focus on the basics. We're humans.
Right. Ultimately, automation and AI, we preach it all the time, but it's supposed to complement the human side of customer experience and business continuity planning. Yes, digital transformation is vital right now during a pandemic, but ultimately it's supposed to complement the humans providing the services for customers. So Stacy, before we wrap up, we usually ask our guests to kind of share a customer experience story that either they were on the business side or the consumer side that they found effective. Maybe they didn't see the service as effective, anything that our audience can learn from to ultimately help them deliver better experiences and services in the long run.
Yeah, I have so many good examples of what I call doing CX right. And I'll share one. So there's a company I ordered a branded t-shirt from, and I was wondering, when am I going to get it? And the company proactively emailed me and said, we haven't forgotten about you. We acknowledge that the delivery is delayed. And here's a reminder, a link where I can go to check the dates and delivery and track it. And the fact that they communicated with me proactively and acknowledged, right, didn't make excuses, but acknowledged that there is a mistake. Obviously, it's beyond their control in this pandemic, but all of those factors is what makes me confident of buying from that brand, trusting them, willing to refer them, and buy again. So great best practices.
Absolutely. So that's all we have for today on Humanizing Customer Experience. Tune into our next session on increasing self-service with Ari Hoffman of Covio. This is Matt Wujek signing off.